Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Woodstock City Council, our special revenue budget meeting. Today is February 26, 2025. This special meeting of Woodstock City Council has been called for the purpose of consideration of the 2025 revenue budget. The meeting is for information and discussion purposes only. No action will be taken as the revenue budget approval is scheduled for the regular meeting of council on March 20th, 2025. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of this meeting will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. This is a hybrid meeting being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. Councillor Lauder is attending virtually and will be raising her hand in view of her webcam when requesting to speak. And with that, we're going to jump into it. Tonight, we are looking at museum, market center, parks and recreation programs, arenas, camps, aquatics, Cowan Sportsplex, special events, IT, public works, waste, sewer, water, clerks, and of course, our mayor and council committee and committees of council. With that, I'll ask, are there any disclosures of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Each department head will be making a presentation in the order outlined on the agenda. We will go through the budget booklet page by page, and council will be provided the opportunity to ask questions of staff. And we are going to start with Ms. Houston, Museum Market Center. So those watching at home, pages 71 and 72 and 79 to 80, welcome.
Thank you. All right, I think my presentation is ready. I see it on my screen. Oh, there we go. Yes, Brad's not here today. We needed his help. Where's Brad when you need him? All right, so I will be covering both the building you see on the screen right now, that is the Woodstock Museum, as well as the Little Theater or Market Center Theater. That is pages 71 and 72 and 79 to 80. I just wanted to cover something before I really started, and I think the picture of the museum will help with this. Last night, Harold DeHaan actually put forward a addition to base budget, and that was for a facility manager. And I really wanted to highlight that before I started anything else. This is a beautiful building. It's pre-Confederation. It has always been my responsibility for the past 20 years to try to maintain it and to make sure that it is in the best working order, whether it's the HVAC or even what I'm going to be highlighting shortly, which is the cupola. I'm the one who has to try and figure out what year should those things go to capital budget. Not someone else, me. And the fact is that when Harold was actually talking about the new position, he talked about it in long-term maintenance, capital maintenance projects, and maintaining same level of services for all facilities. Whether it's the art gallery that we're going to be shortly hiring a new person to be in charge of it, chances are that person will have gone to school for art, not how to maintain and how to assess the HVAC system for the building that they are in. When I put something forward like the cupola this year, I was really conscious of the fact that there are a list of things that the city needs to pay for, but I'm also aware that I am ultimately responsible for the upkeep of this building and trying to match those two things. I think that having someone who is skilled and trained in that would be a better spent of time and money. And I hope that in the future, we can have somebody to do that at the art gallery, at the library, all across the city. I think that it really also helps when you're looking at the people who are managing those facilities. Their time can be better spent somewhere else. All right, achievements for 2024. 2024 was definitely better for staff. We were all healthy and hale. And the museum cupola, it made it look like the front of the building was, under construction. But what has actually been achieved is beautiful. And it was wonderful. I got a chance to go up the scaffolding and actually take some photos of what was done. And we should be good for a long time to come. It looks really, really good. Highlighting that this year for May is Museum Month, we worked with the Ontario Museum Association, and a number of the activities that Carrie was doing at the museum were actually highlighted on the province's page as well as our own. We also partnered with the Little Theatre with their combo programs. I'll be talking about those more later on. The idea is that one class could come to the museum and then the theater and have a full day program. So it increases the chances of teachers wanting to come because they only need one bus, but two classes. We had the best year for educational numbers since the pre-pandemic. So Carrie's efforts working with heritage crafts and craft artisans has been very successful. We've also started a museum space needs feasibility study. I know that David highlighted last night a number of projects that are coming up across the city. This is a little bit behind some of the other ones, but it is part of it as well. Challenges has again been the busing issue that we continue to have with schools. So, museum artifact collection. We are continuing to see the trend where the baby boomers are downsizing. And so they are got quite a few objects that they are interested in the museum having. So usually we have around 33 donors. We had 44 this year that were successful, but 1,292 objects. So what it is we have people who are collectors. They are collecting high quality items we want. So for instance, the first one is a souvenir of the courthouse. This was from a gentleman who had a huge collection of objects that were souvenirs or mementos from local businesses and industry. Those are the top tier. That is what we collect. And so this was one of the objects. The Ross Butler paint pigments. So Ross Butler, his collection, they're talking to the art gallery as well as a museum in Ottawa. However, there were items that the family wanted the museum to have as well, and this was one of them. And Eureka, so this is, of course, made here proudly in Woodstock. We also had over 14,000 people who visited our web portal, and the web portal has that picture and all of the information that we have on that object. We had a series of very successful exhibits last year, starting with the donor who gave us all of the souvenirs and made local, so that made in Woodstock or came from Woodstock. An exhibit almost instantaneously went out. We also had a component of Wedgwood that was a traveling exhibit. Drawn from directions was our historical map exhibit, and that was phenomenal. I am so proud of the actual maps that the museum has in its store, including our insurance maps that we created an entire wall. So any building pretty much in the north part of the city, you could see when was it built and what was it built of. We also worked with the Artisan Guild for rug hooking to celebrate their 50th anniversary. And we had a traveling exhibit that was looking at the 4th, 5th, 6th generation of people who had been interred during World War II, the Japanese Canadian. So the idea was, if you've only got an hour, what do you pack in 2 bags and take with you? The reason it was important to have that exhibit here is that Southwestern Ontario was one of the main areas for sugar beets. And so those people were actually working on those farms in our area. Events. So we worked with the Oxford County Pride on the same day as they had their event in Museum Square to have an escape room in the museum. We also hosted 2 escape rooms in our traditional time periods, Halloween and Christmas, which were extraordinarily popular again. We actually had it so that you could pay for your tickets online, and that was a really, really good thing. We had far fewer people actually canceling their spots, so we were happy of that. Also, we had a speaker come in talking about Black history, and that was also a really good success. Talking about May is Museum Month. That is the Ontario Museum Association's logo for that event. And that was the photo that they had on their website, looking at some of the tours that Carrie and our students had actually produced that were over and above what we normally do, as well as the bus tour that we had to the cow as well. So talking of public programming, these were the kinds of things that are really taking off at the museum. So looking at carving, wood carving, rug hooking, embroidery, the Easter egg dyeing, all of these things have been incredibly popular and continue to be. Our camps last year started out a little slow, but they did pick up. I was talking about, on the far side, you see the picture of the theater. This is what we've been doing in conjunction with the little theater. So they would go to the theater and learn. If they're really little, they just learn how do you be sit and behave yourself while you're at a live theater. If they're not, they get to go up on stage and actually practice how difficult it can be to do public speaking. And then they can go, you see Carrie at the bottom, in these chambers where they actually do mayor for the day, and they talk about civics and how does our government actually work. So 2025. Right now we have a science exhibit on at the museum. It was very successful for Family Day, and we're having a lot of homeschool groups that are actually coming in and doing the science-based education programming. Again, we are having trouble figuring out busing with the regular school board. The continued success with the heritage skills and the artisan workshops. This is something also that Tourism Oxford is trying to highlight this year. They already have their cheese trail, that kind of thing. They're hoping to be doing something similar with artisans and an artisan trail as well in 25. Again, next year is the 125th anniversary for the city. So we're going to be planning a couple of exhibits around that. And this year we are doing doors open October 4th, and we do have enough houses already to do our Christmas home tour again. The theater, first and foremost, I would just really like to highlight that the biggest thing that I think that was a bonus was that we have had the person who has been dedicated to doing the rentals. And so having somebody who that is their sole focus, that and events, has made a huge difference. Everything from updating the online forms that we have for booking, the ability to actually pay when you're simply wanting to, hold your spot, means that we don't have to chase people so much. All of this has been really good. And also the number of actual bookings in. We have large new digital marquee that is actually beside the theater now. And various things that are happening through Theatre Woodstock and our new staff has increased the number of shows that they've done, just in the sense of their cabaret show was completely sold out, and so were their matinee shows. But it's also leading to us advertising on the marquee and in the WOW about Thursday nights. Those aren't nights necessarily that the little theater is actually booked, and we want people in the theater for that. And it has gotten us some dividends already. For 25, we've already got 14 bookings till the end of June. That is when the new year starts, and we get the dates that the little theater has already scheduled for the next year. We are working on the technical upgrades that have been approved in capital budget. We have talked to TIFF about what their expectations are for the technical needs in that building, and we will continue those conversations. to hopefully bring the TIFF films sooner rather than later. Expenses. The only true large change that you will probably see in our pages is the amount that is the person who is doing the rental and the events between the art gallery and the theater. And other than that, most of it is pretty much status quo. So, are there any questions?
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions of our manager of culture? Councillor Schanberg.
Maybe not a question, but maybe just a comment in general. I've really enjoyed my time on the Museum Advisory Committee. And at the last meeting, unfortunately, we had somebody resign from that committee. So there'll be a notification coming up soon that if you want to join the museum. And one of the things we do at the advisory committee is take a look at the artifacts as they come in and are donated. So that's, if you're a history buff, that's certainly something to take advantage of. And I want to thank Karen for all her hard work at the museum for the last 12 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I guess I do have a question before we get into the pages. You mentioned busing as being an issue, and I've heard that over the last little while. Being the city with buses of our own, has there been much cooperation or any thought of discussions between departments?
Your worship, through the question, yes, absolutely. And the transit department has been wonderful. The part of the issue is that, getting buses and getting the teachers organized so that the timing of our buses will work for what they want to do. We also have the fact that the costing and everything else, we always tell teachers that if they are interested, that they can actually utilize the transit for the city. Thus far, not that many have taken us up on it.
Would there, continuing on with that thought, if there's, say, 2 classes, I mean, that's almost a full bus, I would think. So would there be an opportunity to rent one of our buses versus a school bus?
Your worship, through the question, I agree. So we're literally playing with ideas. We're trying to figure out how to get more bodies in. We created this science-based exhibit with the idea this was to entice teachers to come because our science programs are often some of our most popular. So we were talking to communications just this afternoon, trying to figure out. So maybe it is something about getting it in front of teachers. It's not just this. There is the potential to work with transit as well. But we have literally anyone who is questioned, it is on all of our paperwork that we give out to the teachers. If anyone has any ideas,
Yeah.
I'm open.
Well, we have some of the right people
really,
here in the room
yeah,
tonight, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because we do want more schools coming.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you. All right, any other questions before we jump into the pages? All right, we're gonna start with museum 71. We'll do 71 and 72. So anything on museum account number specifics, I remind council to please mention page number as well as what account number you're referencing so everybody can follow along here and at home. With that, I'll open it up. Any questions for the museum itself? Pages 71 and 72. Seeing none. All right, we'll move along to pages 79 and 80. Which is the Market Center. Yes, I do have a question on not a specific line, but just in general for the Market Center with the new equipment that's being installed. Have we gone as far as tendering yet, or we're still trying to get the details from TIFF and the requirements?
Your worship, through to the question, yes, we're looking for more feedback from TIFF as to just the, like, very specific as to what it is they're looking for to make sure that whatever we put forward is exactly what is required. So we're still in that process.
Thought so, just wanted to make sure. So last chance for everybody. Market Center on page 79 and 80. Anything for Ms. Houston at all? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have the Director of Parks and Rec, Mr. Connors. Welcome. So there's a lot of pages here. This is for those following along at home, pages 54 to 102 is what we're going to be talking about. So, welcome.
Thank you. Your worship, members of council, I will first present the 2024 highlights that occurred in Parks and Recreation, followed by some divisional metrics of where the Recreation Department is and where we are heading. I will conclude with my portion of the overview of the 2025 recreation budget with the recreation additions to base budget. I will then turn it over to Rita Haran, who will cover the Parks Department budget presentation. So some high-level accomplishments that occurred in 2024. Finkel Street spray and play pad was completed. We will have a turning on the tap launch in the spring. Special events, Cowpalooza and Cowpalooza Country. The weather did not cooperate with us for Cowpalooza Country, unfortunately, but did break in time for an unimpeded Cowpalooza with Sloan. We also had record numbers in camps, aquatics, recreation programs. All city programs have again seen these record numbers in participation as well as revenues. I will cover this more in detail later on in the presentation. Record facility bookings at the arena. 2024 saw another record high in ice revenues with a 20% year-over-year increase. Homer Brown redevelopment. The playground was redeveloped with the final phase of the park redevelopment taking place in 2025. Tip O'Neill redevelopment was completed. Cowan Sportsplex community room was completed. Cowan Sportsplex AV and entrance hall were also completed. Donald Thompson Community Gardens. This new accessible community gardens was completed. And the Brompton athletic pad was renewed. So getting into the arena metrics, Reeves Community Complex had a 13% year-over-year increase in front door traffic. In 2023 and 2024, so the season previous, Monteith Brown Consultants calculated that prime fill ice percentage rates in Woodstock were between 91 and 97%. The 2024-2025 season had even more bookings. No facility has 100% ice fill rate due to different lengths in user group schedules. However, we can say now with a high degree of confidence that prime time ice, which really equates to youth ice, is at capacity in the city of Woodstock. Shoulder hours, late night, and early morning hours still have some availability, but these times make it inaccessible for youth. And on all of these metric charts, you will see a 10-year flow-through chart of revenues. So that's the one for the arenas. Southside Aquatic Center is in a similar situation to the arena as capacity issues are becoming a problem at this facility as well. Mitigation efforts in 2025 should help alleviate one of the facility's pinch points, which is lack of change room space. However, given population projections, this fix will only go so far. Total lesson revenue and participations are up at all-time highs. Lesson revenue is 58% higher from pre-pandemic levels. Over the last 2 years, we have started to see wait lists with our fall and spring lesson blocks. We are hoping to have change room expansion scheduled for the end of this year, which will allow more lessons to run, which will hopefully temporarily manage this backlog. Cowan Sportsplex and Recreation Programs. Again, I sound like a broken record here. Both Cowan Sportsplex and the city-run recreation programs have increased to record levels in terms of participation and revenues. Recreation programs have increased 51% pre-pandemic levels, and Cowan Sportsplex has increased 208% since 2018, the first year the city assumed operation of the facility. Cowan Sportsplex has changed from a sports rental facility that provides space for soccer, volleyball, and walking track for members to a multi-sport community center that provides space for not only soccer, volleyball, and a walking track, but also accommodates lacrosse, pickleball, basketball, football, as well as programs such as floor hockey, Friday night fun nights, holiday specials, babysitting courses, home alone courses, Nerf games, laser tags, bubble soccer, flag football, and much more, as well as being our main hub for camps. Speaking of camps, City of Woodstock camps have also included continued to grow in revenue and participation. Revenue in 2024 grew 25%. That is over $85,000. 2024 saw participation growth by 479 campers year over year. Camps did run into higher than anticipated transportation costs in 2024 and trip administration costs, but due to the high volume of camp participations, this mitigated most of the budget shortfalls. Now, a slight break from me speaking here. Special events do not have registration metrics to review, but is a valuable asset to the community engagement and social well-being. Like all parks and recreation divisions, special events falls under the strategic plan of enhance the quality of life. This short video provides some of the highlights of special events that the city provided in 2024.
Me when I got hold of the ace. I've got faith, I believe it'll do whatever it takes. Oh yeah. All right. Ain't nobody gonna keep me down. What? What?
Okay, now that you've had a video, I'm going to go back into budgeting. Yeah. This is a chart of the budget to actuals and overalls. Park and Recreation finished 2024 with a surplus of 5.5%. This has mostly been brought about by higher than anticipated usage in rental and registered programs. And there's all the numbers rolled up. Before ending with Recreation's final slide, I wanted to cover 4 notable items within the Parks and Recreation base budget. The first takes place on page 54 Parks and Recreation Administration and shows an increase of $8,000. This is due to credit card charges when booking registration programs in Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Again, this was from the higher upside surprise in program registration. The next line is Parks Communication Expenses on page 56. Shows an increase of $19,000, which is the Parks implementation of the Mesh software program that is currently operating within Public Works. This allows for the city to be more easily compliant with the CVOR regulations, the Commercial Vehicle Operation Registry, and allows for better work order management within parks. The next one I have touched on a little bit, which is the Camps Transportation and Purchase Services. As mentioned earlier, Camps Transportation and Purchase Services had a surprising increase after camp trips were publicized. This reflects on page 65 of the budget. And finally, Cowan Sportsplex repair and maintenance. Repair and maintenance costs increased by $15,000 found on page 81. This was due to a one-time external facility cleaning costs or cleaning cost and increased in lift maintenance. So now on to additions to base budget. One of the inescapable themes from Parks and Recreation is the uptake in rental and direct programs. These are very good things and the reason why this department exists. However, with such rapid growth comes system strains, both in terms of standards and in terms of administrative support. To help alleviate recreation pressures, the following 3 additions to base budgets have been put forward for your consideration. The first is a full-time clerk that would take care of inputting recreation and camp programs, as well as train and support part-time clerks. Recreation hires many part-time clerks as it is an entry-level position. However, we do not have the staff to provide full in-depth system training to help deal with all of the computer backlogs that the full-time staff have. One of the roles of this position would be to focus on training new clerks, staff, so that they can be more productive and help manage the workload of the full-time clerks. Additionally, the recreation clerk would help to provide seamless coverage to full-time clerks, as well as assist in aspects of the FAIR program, which is needed in order to distribute as much of the unused funding as possible. The next request is a full-time recreation coordinator is being requested at Cowan Sportsplex. With so many more people and programs taking place at Sportsplex, staff are in need of further support. Before the manager of Cowan Sportsplex went off on medical leave this year, she logged in over 200 calls in 2024 for evening and weekend issues requiring her attention. This position would also help alleviate the pressure that would also help in the supervision of growing recreation and camp programs. There is a capacity issue when dealing with so many programs, rentals, campers, parents, and user groups. If council approves this recommendation change, the part-time 4-month camp supervisor position would be removed in order to lessen the budget impact. And the third and final request is to convert part-time hours, custodial hours at Southside Aquatic Center to a full-time position. Difficulty maintaining staff at the part-time custodial position has prompted this request. This ends the recreation portion of the presentation. I will now turn it over to the Supervisor of Parks and Forestry, Rita Haran, to complete the park section.
Thank you, Brian. Our Parks Department is unique in comparison to other municipalities. Not only do we have maintenance operations, but we also construct park assets in-house with our own staff. This provides high-quality facilities at a low capital cost. Parks maintenance operations have increased due to the growth in population, park use, increase of parklands, and demand for multiple recreation opportunities based on our growing demographic. A few things to note in the base budget for parks are the student subsidy, which you can find on page 55. So this reflects grant funding that's applied for each year to support summer staff hiring. We've been very successful with this funding in the past, especially over the pandemic. But unfortunately, this funding is being decreased in the last years. So this $5,000 decrease in this revenue account is reflective of that. Next, you'll see our revenue from equipment on page 55. And I know this has been touched on in a few previous presentations, but this is the surplus revenue from internal charges for use of city parks equipment. So this funding is a result of a contribution to the equipment reserve that goes back to equipment replacement. So our department is increasing the revenue to match the current cost of replacement and yearly operating. And you'll see this reflected throughout our parks budget where you see equipment lines. The parks cleanup purchases services is listed on page 57. We're presenting two options as additions to base budget or for contracted services, and I'll go into those in more detail later on in this presentation. Lastly, I wanted to point out the PIDOC maintenance agreement. So this budget line is the cost for the agreement between the city and the UTRCA, and this represents the annual payment to keep the portion of the North Shore open to the public access and maintained by the UTRCA. And the yearly increase is based on the CPI index that was negotiated. So some pressures that we're seeing on our service delivery. The park maintenance operations have increased due to the growth in population and increase of parklands. This has put stress on the Parks and Forestry Department, creating service level gaps. Specialized staff are being pulled away from their regular duties to assist with increased volume of general park maintenance, vandalism, garbage, and encampments. As you can see from these charts, our population has increased 18.6% since 2016, and it's projected to keep climbing and increase by 27% over the next 10 years. We have a unique demographic in Woodstock with a large number of young families as well as an aging population. Although this is good, it also affects the varying variety of recreation opportunities that we need to continue offering as we grow. So looking at our parkland, Parks currently maintains 1,237 acres of land. This includes 56 neighborhood community parks. The percentage of park maintained lands increased 10% from 2020 to 2024. And then there's another 18% increase projected for the coming years based on the current submitted development applications. The far chart on the side there is parks revenue, which you can see has continued to steadily climb as we see an increase of use of outdoor parks and recreation spaces post-COVID. These factors, compounded with the increased volume of general park maintenance, vandalism, garbage, and encampments, continue to put pressures on our department, which in turn is making it challenging to provide the same service level year over year. So looking at our asks for this year, we're looking to add a horticulture technician. This full-time role would work under the guidance of the Parks Assistant Supervisor of Horticulture. The technician will assist with training and coaching seasonal staff on routine horticultural tasks, such as planting, pruning, and weeding, and then they would improve the skills and reduce the workload that is currently on just one existing horticulture employee. We currently have a ratio of 16:1 of students to full-time in horticulture. This is not efficient for one person to oversee 16 students working in multiple areas all across the city. A balanced workforce of skilled staff and student laborers will lead to more efficient tasks completion. The technician's specialized knowledge will support the seasonal program in months when we do not have student labor, such as tulip planting in the fall, winter baskets and displays, and early garden cleanup in preparation for spring planting. A dedicated parks horticulture technician will improve the efficiency, expertise, and quality of horticulture operations. Their specialized knowledge will enhance the maintenance and care of the city's green spaces, ensuring we have a healthier, more vibrant parks. So into our final ask for parks, these are the two options that I referenced earlier in regards to encampment response. So option 1 includes 3 full-time staff comprising of 1 assistant supervisor and 2 skilled laborers. The assistant supervisor will focus on general park maintenance, including vandalism, graffiti, and garbage, supervise our turf crews, manage equipment maintenance and service, as well as encampment response management. The 2 skilled laborers in encampment response will monitor encampments and complete regular cleanups in active sites, reducing the need for large cleanups and contracted services. They're going to provide quick response time for cleanup in active and abandoned sites, and they'll work with county outreach to track and document sites. They will resolve issues proactively, which will enhance our park safety. They will respond to vandalism, illegal dumping, graffiti, sharps, garbage, and general park maintenance, which will also help address the park's service gaps in our department. Hiring an internal encampment response team might not be the least expensive option, but these positions will deal with much more than just encampment response. They will free up existing specialized staff, such as arborists and horticulturalists, so that they can focus on their areas of expertise instead of being pulled away. This will improve the department efficiency overall and will help address growing service gaps in the department, such as vandalism, increased garbage, and illegal dumping. Option 2 may be a more inexpensive option as we're presenting it, but it does not address the growing pressures on the department. Contracting this work out will jeopardize our department's ability to work efficiently, and it will continue providing the same service levels that our citizens expect in parks and forestry. And that concludes our presentation. We'll open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you. A lot of information. Any questions for Director of Parks and Rec or for Ms. Horan, Supervisor, Parks and Forestry, on the presentation before we get into all the pages? None? Well, I get a couple. Ms. Horan, I'm going to start with the I think you said it well with the reactive versus proactive, that comparison. I've been having troubles with this for the last few years. It's no secret the money we're spending on just cleanups is gone and goes to contractors. The amount difference doesn't look so bad when you look at it on a simple chart like that, saying what else we can do with that staff year round in other cases. So do you believe, and I know you're, you know, your feet on the ground, you're in, and I thank you and your staff for doing all the work. Do you think, in your opinion, that by being proactive, we can lessen the encampment's cleanups needs? Is that a fair way to say that politically as well? Like, I just, the optics, of course, I get a lot of complaints in my office about people driving by, seeing encampments. What can we do? I would much rather, with everything we're doing at the county, partnership there, hard hub funding, I'm just thinking that big picture, hoping to get people out of living rough. And of course, being able to clean up after once we are able to have them move on in transition places.
Yeah, so your worship, through to your question, if we were to take a proactive approach and go into encampments while they're active and do cleanups throughout the time that those individuals are working with the county on a housing plan to get into safer indoor shelter, I believe we'll have less large cleanups at the end. We could reduce a lot of the costs when it comes to contracted services and for removal of the debris. a lot of times the debris that are in encampments that we see are from buildup of garbage and belongings that they no longer need or that were soiled or got wet in a storm, and they have no means to dispose of them the same way everyone else does. So by going and proactively assisting with cleaning up and removing some of those buildup of debris throughout the time that they're working with the county on housing, I think we could reduce the large cleanups.
Okay, and if I can continue on that, and I know we're guesstimating here, but would you think, say the two dedicated staff members, would they focus on encampments 50% of the time, 80% of the time? What do you see? What do you have in mind compared to doing other projects and other things around the city?
So through to your question, I think it really depends seasonally. So during the winter months, a lot of people do seek indoor warmer shelter, find other options, and we're not seeing as much need for cleanups currently as we see in the summer months. So I think that shift will happen. So this time of year, our Parks Department is working on a lot of garbages in our neighborhood parks, illegal dumping, those types of things. I see this crew helping out with that. Graffiti is also a concern this time of year. Buildings that are out in parks that are closed that need to be checked on and inspected. There's lots of that type of work as well as snow removal. So the summer months, I see them doing a lot more for encampment response and cleanups. And then in the winter months or periods of the summer where we have fluxes kind of moving back and forth. So it's a hard
And it's
question to
pretty little.
answer. I think it's going to vary depending on the season and depending on the need. But at least 50% in the summer and the busier months where we're seeing a lot of people moving around and a lot of cleanups needed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin.
Could I take your line of questioning one step further? Is there a strategy that if we collectively, we can get a handle on encampments, would there be a strategy then for the encampment response for those individuals to be integrated elsewhere? The vision is one day we won't see as many or any encampments if we can address this. Is there a strategy then for those workers to be integrated elsewhere?
Yeah, so your worship, through to the councillor's question, as I showed, our department, our land is growing, the amount that we're maintaining, our population is growing, our park use is growing. So if we start to see a decline in the number of encampments, I believe we are still going to see an increase in the amount of land we're maintaining and the amount of use we're seeing in our parks. Thus, more garbages to change, more grass to cut, more general park maintenance. So that staff could integrate quite easily, I believe, from one aspect of their job into a full other portion.
I'm glad you brought that up as well. Yeah. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through your worship to Ms. Horan, last year on the ask, there was, when this was brought forward for the budget, there was, it included a slide dump truck as well as a utility vehicle. Are those things that aren't, I guess, maybe needed or aren't felt need to be a part of it this year? Because obviously the ask does look a little bit different. It's broken down a little bit differently. So are those just pieces of equipment that don't need to be utilized or perhaps could be rented if needed?
Your worship, through the councillor's question, our ask does look a little bit different this year. Like I said, our pressures on our department are a little bit different and have grown a little bit more than they did last year, as well as working another year with a contractor and seeing their operations and the equipment we have in-house, being able to share and utilize tractors throughout our department, our good steer loader and our existing equipment. We have included money to keep one of our 1-ton trucks on instead of retiring it. So that is where you'll see a big reduction in capital cost. We're not asking for a large 1-ton truck. We're asking just to keep one instead of retiring it this year. So that was one area where we were able to be a little creative and find some cost savings and ways to make it work a little bit better for the budget. We've just looked within our department to see where we could find some savings there.
Anything else on the presentation itself before we get into specific page numbers and accounts? Seeing none, so as we go along with the page numbers, I'll allow whoever comes up or who can answer it the best, if that's okay. We're gonna start at page 54. So under Parks and Recreation. Any questions on page 54? Seeing none, we'll move along to page 56 and 57 at this point, under Parks. Yeah. I was looking at 55, it's not on my sheet here, but you're right, thank you. Yes. It was just, I did miss page 55. So I'll ask for any questions on page 55, 56, 57. Councillor Leathermore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't sure to ask this following Ms. Horan's presentation or now, but on page 55, 070169330000, encampment response county contract. I'm assuming it's cut off there, but just wanted to understand the 50,000 budgeted under revenue for 2025 as it relates to the encampment response. Is this, I think it was touched on in the mayor's task force. So just a better understanding is this a annual contribution from the county as it relates to encampments? Is it contracted cleanup? Just if I can understand a bit more about this number, that would be great.
Your worship, through to the councilor's question. So my understanding, this isn't an ongoing annual contribution for this amount, but the county did have funding that they could put towards contracted services this year, and you'll see that reflected in our ask. This portion, we would also work with the county to help them on some of their property that they own, as we have a contractor already hired and set up to do work. So we would assist in some of this funding could go towards some of the property where the county and the city kind of share lines, and encampments don't necessarily stay on property boundaries, but there's some shared spots there, as well as other cleanups.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Councillor Schanberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to Rita, I guess the best way of asking this question is when an encampment appears on private property, would it be a request to the city to assist financially or manpower to work on that?
Your worship, through the councilor's question, so the first point of contact if someone discovers an encampment, whether it's on private property or public property, would be contacting the bylaw department with the city. They would then do an investigation as to where it's located, what the scope is, if it's active or inactive. From there, we involve the county outreach to start working on a housing plan, or if they're known individuals to them, to work with them. If it is on private property, the city, through the Parks Department, is currently not cleaning up those. Someone would have to be a delegation at council, I believe, to request for private property.
Anyone else? Again, still on pages 55, 56, and 57 before we move along. Flip the page and do 58, 59, and 60 is very short. So we'll include pages 58, 59, and 60 for parks. Councillor Schanberg.
Yes, on page 58, under trail maintenance, 0101, the total for 24 was 93,793. But again, for the 2025 revenue budget, 77,540 is what you're asking for. Would that number be fine, or is it? And it's 5,000 higher than what was projected for 2024, but just curious to make sure you're asking for enough or what is specifically that money be for?
Your worship, through the councilor's question. So the full-time wages and the part-time wages here, you can see we're lower on the part-time wages. A lot of our seasonal staff flux between different portions of our department. And in trail specifically this last year, we had more full-time staff working in that portion of the department. So that's why you'll see higher charges there. It was for cross-training. We know we have some retirements coming up in the next few years, and we had some staff changes. So you'll see that's why that's increased there. But overall, throughout all of our part-time and full-time wages, we've maintained the same amount of staffing. You'll just see that there's a few differences in where that money got charged in our e-time card system.
Thank you. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Looking on page 59 under complex, the final three numbers are 0353. It's the ground maintenance water. Last year was 5,000 and it's 19,000 this year. Is this because of the splash pad area, that like the increase to supplement water there? Okay.
Your worship, through the councilor's question, that's correct. It is to pay for the expected water usage at the new splash pad.
Didn't want to make an assumption.
Yeah, you're correct.
There's one I had highlighted as well, so question. Anyone else up to page 60 so far? Seeing none, we will move along. That brings us to 61 and 62 we'll do as recreation programs. Any questions on that? Councillor Leatherborough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Connors, at the very bottom, rec programs, fare, fee and assistance. I think this came up last year, so same amount budgeted this year, but year to date for 2024 is, roughly 14,000. I think last year the question was, are those fees still out there and just not being used? I think in your presentation as well, part of the additions to base budget was to manage these funds and other things. So if you can just help me understand this, that'd be great.
Your worship, through to the councilor's question. Yes, this this comes about by the FAIR program fills up through application process. So the money is provided to the people that it should be provided to, and they hold it in their accounts. We try at the end of the year to contact them if they haven't fully used that, because there are others on the wait list that want to use that money. This year, because of our clerical shortage, we weren't able to make those contacts, and that kind of led to the 35 was distributed but wasn't fully used, so you see it only coming in at 14. So if we have time, we usually connect with people, talk to them, ask them, are you going to use this by the end of the year, and have a second intake later in on the year for the people that are on our wait list.
If I can follow along that, I've got that highlighted as well. Have we ever, at least in recent memory, used up all the 35,000 under the FAIR program?
Your worship, through to your question, we haven't used it completely all, because sometimes there is like dollars and cents left in multiple accounts, right? So if, camp, sending a child or two children to camp, there'll be some change left over. And if that isn't pulled out, then we don't go to the full extent. We've come very close some years, but we never get right to the top, just given that there's, some changes with a few dollars here and there left into people's accounts.
I'm just thinking, and I think this is my 10th or 11th budget I've done, and we talked about this every single year, how those dollars never seem to be fully spent. And I'm just wondering if is there an opportunity we can look at just to be able to help more families? Maybe start a reserve or something that some years it might get used up more than others, but we certainly want this money to go to those families that need it.
Your worship, you're absolutely correct. One of the issues that we run into too is we've looked at other communities, like some do it the same way we do it. Others do it differently. But what the others that do it differently lack is, in ours, what happens is, a family applies, they receive the funds, and they're become their funds to use as they see fit. So it gives them a lot more dignity, a lot more freedom to choose programs, where others are more prescriptive. Like, you apply for a camp and that's what you get, and you get nothing else, right? So it's that way you can spend more money, but it is very prescriptive, and it kind of lacks a little more freedom for people that, you know, want to apply for multiple things. They have to apply multiple times. So we could look at other ways to have an ongoing, so we wouldn't have to, like, so the money that wasn't spent, you know, does get put into a reserve and gets rolled over that way. That might be something to look at moving forward.
Really think if we could do something like that, I'd recommend that. I don't want to speak for all of council, but I'd like to see that used up fully or more. For sure. Again, because it's something we do seem to talk about on a regular basis, but how it's not always used. Counselor Schoenberg.
My question's along the same line. Can you take the 20,000 and put it towards community grants first intake for the next calendar year? I know that's maybe not your expertise, Brian, but maybe there's somebody that could sort of answer that question, because in essence, the money comes from the Gateway Casino slots to begin with.
Your worship, through the councilor's question, I would, after this conversation, I think what I can do is speak to the folks in Treasury to see what is permissible and what we can do. And we could certainly look at, you know, any suggestions that would bring, you know, this forward, or this, these funds more easily accessible or earlier accessible to folks.
Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Through your worship to Mr. Connors, just kind of tailing off of what we've already been discussing. I know in the one ask with this clerk's position, is the FAIR program, did you mention that would fall under their umbrella, or part of it potentially could fall under their umbrella?
Your worship, through the councilor's question, yes, this would be one of the areas that the clerk's department has had some struggles with, which is the timing of this. It's to connect with everyone to see if they're going to use the money in the final session or not, and then to bring it forward. That is a period of high use for the clerks, and if they don't have that time, then it doesn't get done. This would be a specific task for that clerk, so they would make sure they put time on their schedule to do that work, knowing that it seems to be every year we're into the same position.
And just to follow up to that, I mean, if that's a position that does end up going through, I think, just thinking of how other funding programs work and grant programs work and such, you know, giving a first and second warning to folks to use the dollars by a certain time. And if not used, those dollars are re-released by a certain date, so that come August, let's say, just throwing a month out there, those funds are reallocated to other folks who might be on a wait list. So, you know, thinking of just ways that role could maybe take on something like that, because if the funds are not being used and there's people on the wait list, I'd rather see the money going to a family than going into a reserve or something, like, so the dollars can be used in the year they're allocated. So if something could be, if that position was something that does get approved, if something can be coordinated, I'd love to see something like that. My brain's not going to help you with that tonight, though.
No, we won't figure that out tonight, but Counselor Schoenberg, did you have something else? Sorry, no? Okay. That brought us, any other questions before I move along to arenas? Anything else on rec programs? Going, okay, moving along. Arena 63, and I'll use 64 as well. Any questions on page 63 or 64? Under arenas, specifically Civic Center, right now? I got a general question if I can, while everybody's looking at their books. Civic Center, it's no secret, it's getting close to end of life, let's call it, or potentially. You already mentioned the demands on ice time and everything else. If we had a catastrophic failure at the Civic, I can just imagine that would put us in a big bind. But equipment wise, like the actual ice making equipment, is it, if memory serves me correct, we did some work quite a few years ago, but how mechanically sound is it? Is there much fear of it breaking down? Not as worried about even just the ice, but just the mechanically. What's it like?
Your worship, through to your question, there are several weak points at Civic. The floor is one of them. The boards are another. I believe some of the ice making operations would be. I'm going to turn to my arena manager to. That is correct, right? Yes. So there are several areas where we could see a catastrophic failure at some point in time. We're trying not to let things go as long as Lions, because Lions had a safety net, and Civic does not. We were able, when Lions went down, we're able to transfer the entire Lions program pretty much into the Southside Aquatic Center. That cannot happen from the complex.
And I suppose that's where my fear is, thinking of Lions Pool. Of course, we did have that where we don't here. So just opening it back up to the floor, any questions on pages 63 and 64 on Civic Center Arena on account numbers? Seeing none, moving along to 73. I believe that's Southwood. It is. We'll do the entire section, 73, 74, and 75. Any questions for Southwood Arena? And those account numbers? Seeing none? Okay, we're gonna move along. We're into camps. If we go back to page 65 and 66. Any questions for camps? Page 65 and 66. Looking at the numbers, it's incredible. Yeah. I feel like I should have a timer here. We have 30 seconds to decide if there's a question. No. Anything on camps under account numbers? Okay, moving along to aquatics. And that's 67, 68, and 69. The Southside Aquatic Center. Counselor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Page 68, fourth line from the top, 0313 subscriptions. Looks like a pretty big bump there of 125% increase. So just wondering, going from $2,000 budgeted to 4,500? Is that memberships? Is that?
Your worship, through to the councillor's question, that is memberships. And that is because of the numbers we're moving through the.
So increased users means increased
Yes.
subscription. Okay.
You're more than welcome to come forward
Yes,
if that's
please.
okay with Brian. Come forward to
Please.
the microphone. Yes, please. Welcome, Megan.
Your worship, through to the councilor's question, the subscriptions also hit our new scheduling app, which is called Rec Staff. I have over 75 aquatic staff alone, let alone front desk and janitorial staff, and that really helps me schedule all of them where it's easily accessible on their phones to post shifts, pick up shifts. When we inputted rec staff, I was the first kind of jump on rec staff out of all of our parks and rec managers. And so when those bills came in, it hit my account specifically because I was the one utilizing it. But now that we are all across the board going to be utilizing it for 2025, it'll be spread out a little bit easier. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Councillor Shanberg.
I'm gonna wait till Megan sits down to ask my question. I know 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was a talk about a lack of lifeguards and instructors at pools as some of them are aging out and not getting replaced. Could have been COVID, could have been other reasons. Just wanted to know, with the increased numbers, obviously, of not only camps, but participation in swim lessons, how that situation is going as far as staffing the lesson times.
Your worship, through to the councillor's question, I can answer this one. Woodstock has always been able to have enough lifeguards and instructors to continue with its program. We've been very fortunate. During the pandemic, the aquatic supervisor at the time was very aggressive in putting in leadership programs whenever we were legally allowed to do that, and we were able to move people through the process. Right now, we're still a training center, so a lot of folks from other communities come to our pool to do aquatic leadership, and that has provided us with enough lifeguard and aquatic staff to keep going, even though lesson programs keep growing and the need for instructors keep growing. So we do have enough. We don't have a bountiful plenty, but we have enough to keep going.
Anyone else? Again, pages 67, 68, and 69 for aquatics. Okay. We'll move along to Cowan Sportsplex, which is 81, and we'll do 82 as well. If you flip the page, part page. Any questions on those accounts? Page 81 and 82. Cowan Park. Councillor Shanberg.
Yeah, I guess maybe just curiosity if Mr. Connors can, just where the revenues come from, the walking track, and even things like the birthday promotions that I apparently are quite popular, but I don't see where the revenues would be on the 7 lines here.
Your worship, through the councillor's question, some of the rentals end up in recreation programs, as that's where the fees come out of. So if there's a birthday party with a attachment of a person, then it will go to the rec programs. If not, if it's just a straight rental, it will be shown here. So a lot of the birthday parties, if they do have a rec leader attached to them, which is quite popular, it would show up in the recreation revenues.
Good question. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Anthony. Page 81, repairs and maintenance, 0308. It's about the fourth line from the bottom. Budgeted last year of 30,000, actuals of 22,000, but we're budgeting 45,000. Is there something we're anticipating?
Your worship, through the councillor's question. This is the item that was brought up in the presentation. There's a one-time cleaning fee that's going to be put in there, and there's also some increased lift maintenance anticipated.
If I can add along that same item number, then the cleaning, is this the turf we're referring to? Cleaning the turf or just in general?
Your worship, through to your question, this is a lot of the external building requires a deep cleaning. This parks staff actually do the cleaning of the turf. So yeah, that would not be included.
Thank you. Anyone else for questions on Cowan Sportsplex? Again, pages 81 and 82. Being none, go to special events. Page 98, for those following along. So go pages 98 and 99. Any questions on either page, 98 or 99? I'm reminded every year how many events we hold when I look at these sections. It's incredible. I thank staff for it. No questions, page 98 and 99. I'll open it up to the entire section, include 100, 101, and 102. Any questions on any special events? Slide items. Still not seeing Nickelback numbers here for Calapalooza. I'm just saying that.
Are you seeing Taylor Swift?
Or Taylor Swift. No questions at all? Okay, I think that finishes up. Mr. Connors, thank you very much. Next up, we have our Chief Information Officer and Director of Information Technology, Mr. Grattan. Welcome.
Good evening, your worship, members of council.
And this is pages 14 and 15 for those watching at home and here in council chambers.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is my first go around at actually presenting. Usually David or Diane or somebody else does it for me. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the 2024 highlights. Technology is used in every leg of our organization. So we have a primary approach, which is security for cybersecurity. We do operational viability, and we do enhanced training for our end users. So as you can see through the highlights, not exhaustive, and obviously I don't tell you what we do, but we've added more layers to our cybersecurity posture, meaning different technologies layered amongst one another to give us a better approach. We've increased our connections to a lot of our facilities, maintaining operational viability, and we have enhanced employee training, helps understand, the things that we face every day that are coming in via email or website or cell phones, etc. Sticking with that same theme of security, operational viability, and enhanced user training, our 2025 project is very similar to that. Our approach year over year is to make sure that we're continually trying to add additional layers to ensure that we're in a safe position as an organization. Some of the other things that we do is we work with every department on many initiatives. Some of the other department leaders over the yesterday and today had mentioned some of the things that are working toward, and we're in the background trying to unify those pieces. So if you look at things like process automation, this talks about things of onboarding and offboarding, which is pretty crucial to our organization. Data consolidation through centrally unifying data. This talks about an ERP solution. This is taking many components of our organization, and instead of using many singular devices, organizing a singular platform so that we can get rid of redundancies, errors, and create efficiencies. And then lastly, we have our enhanced collaboration through software suites in that of SharePoint. Our organization is growing at a rapid pace, and we need to make sure that we have a portal that all can use and access to get information that they're seeking in a timely manner. Additionally, what we focus on in IT is asset lifecycle. As you know, everybody has a computer here today, everybody has a cell phone. We need to figure out how long these are going to stay in existence. What do the software manufacturers tell us in terms of lifespan? What is the cost for those? What's the capital cost? And looking at each department, as well as when there's new hires or summer students or things of that nature, that we make sure we have the equipment on hand to provide it to them. One of the other really big pieces that doesn't get a lot of conversation around is change management. All the things that we do has to have a run book. It has to have a start and a finish so that we have the ability to recover should we require it. And then obviously you tie all this stuff together and it allows us to strategically plot our way forward. Now let's get on to the fun stuff. Addition to base. We're seeking a 2025 impact of 86.5. What we're trying to do here is another component to add to our security posture that allows us to timely identify issues without spending many human hours to try and recover it. It basically sources the information that we're looking for, categorizes it, and allows us to act upon it should we have to. It also allows us to build a really significant risk management profile around it. So at the end of the day, it comes down to three pieces. We need to create efficiencies. We need to make sure that we're strategically aligned with the plan going forward in terms of our security posture for the organization. And we need to make sure that we have a risk management profile to give us the understanding of, do we need to avoid, mitigate, or whatever the next step might be. And then finally, I was looking at this slide and I was thinking, looking at the strategic plan, trying to figure out how technology intertwines with all of it. It really could go through everything. Everything we do today, technology is the enabler. But where I think it really focuses on IT for us is under two objectives as e-service delivery, meaning ERP, SharePoint, and many other software suites that we have available to us. Even those things like reception, for example, when people call our facilities, how does that happen? It's part of us. And number 17, which is really focuses on business continuity. We need to understand the things in each of our areas of the organization that have to remain viable in any event. And building a plan around it and testing that gives us that capability. And unfortunately, that's the end of my presentation. I'm not nearly as good as the rest of them, but I open it to questions.
Well, thank you. I know for a fact you've reached out to all of council and offered any assistance for security reasons, of course. I can appreciate for us to answer or ask only questions that can be asked at this point. But I certainly know you and your staff are willing to sit down. I mean, it's a whole different language and you've drawn pictures and everything else to make sure I can understand. And I greatly appreciate that, let me tell you, because
Well,
this really is another language.
I have to credit my team.
Yeah.
I don't do the work that they do. They're the smart people. I'm just up here kind of reciting the things that I put down. I think it's really important to understand too, as much as I talk about security and alignment and risk management, and the big components, the heavy weighted components for the organization, when it comes down to it, we're just customer service. And our sole purpose is to make sure that everybody within the organization has the tools and capabilities around them to create efficiencies on their parts. So with that, that's all I have.
Any questions of council on the presentation? In general, or I will open it up right now for pages 14 and 15, specifically item numbers. Seeing none? Thank you very much.
First time was great. Thanks, everyone.
And that brings us to Public Works. So we have our Public Works Supervisor, Alex Laros. I've been awfully nice to this gentleman sitting here in council chambers for a long time. I get to make up for it tonight, but no pressure. No. Welcome. This, of course, we're talking about Public Works, Waste, Sewer, and Water. For those following along, we'll be talking about pages 16 to basically 43. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Like Chris, this is my first time even speaking here after I've been here a few occasions. So I'm going to try keeping this brief and to the point and informative for you all. This presentation will go over each of the public works areas, showing some of the 2024 highlights, 2025 initiatives, and a quick high-level review of the budget numbers. I'll note that I have no additional requests to the base this year. So the four key areas in public works is public works, the 300 budget, which is your roads maintenance, waste recycling, which is the 302 budget, sanitary with 305, and water, which is 306. I will note that 3 of the 4 are county funded budgets and they're not city funded. So year in review for the works department. Our mesh business analyst has made great strides developing work management modules. Like Brian before me had said, the mesh vehicle circle checks is in that, grass cutting, sidewalk deficiencies. On that note, we had 876 sidewalk deficiencies at the start of 2024. The crew was able to get that down to 272 by the end of the year. Proposed initiatives for the 2025 year are to continue building out the SOPs, standard operating procedures for all public works functions. We will continue to build out work management systems to support all functions. We have routing technology for increased efficiency. That will be, like Chris before me said, the phones that all the staff have. The waste collectors will have turn-by-turn directions how to get through their mapping. When these employees are going route by route by route, day after day, and then they get put into a different route, it sometimes gets confusing as to where they have to go. This new rasters will give them the route to go, so it'll be a lot easier for them. Another thing we want to bring in this year is service requests. Build out a portal. We're going to start small with the brush cleanup and Christmas tree cleanup so that when residents have put out their Christmas tree, they can log it in and that'll then get put back into rasters so staff know how to get through and pick up the trees most efficient. This table here shows the budget from 2024 and then 2025. A couple of the notable changes you'll find is the staff increased wages that were contractually agreed upon this past year, and a 5% increase in equipment charges. The other one that I can point to is the storm sewers. It jumped up 36.6%. That happens to be funds that came from a capital project or a capital program that is now in with the sewer CCTV. So for storm lines. Here's a visual. This here is a visual where you'll see where the majority of the funding in public works was spent in 2024 and where we project to spend for 2025. And I'll note here that there is not very many changes. I will say it again that this is one of the county-funded programs, waste recycling. The year in review here for us was changing the garbage and recycling routes to improve the balance across the city. This is one I know I watched last year's budget meeting, and there was a feather in the cap that we've never missed a collection day due to weather. And I can state even as today, we still didn't miss a collection day due to weather. Some proposed initiatives going forth for 2025. We're going to continue to build out our SOPs for all waste activities, which also includes the fact that we're going to have to write the organics SOPs. The organics program is going to start as of January 1st, 2026. Educational campaign for the Enviro Depot organics, waste collection. These are all items that we're working with communications on the city level and the county level. This is also going to give us, with Mesh, we're going to work into another type of service request where if we happen to miss somebody's garbage, then it can get logged in and it would be a request that staff gets. In this table here, it shows, again, what was asked in 2024 and what we're asking for 2025. You will notice that there's a decrease in the revenues from other sources, and that was brought up last year in the budget. And what that equates to again is the recycled material fluctuation in market pricing. So again, overall, not a significant change here. This again is a visual of what we spent in 2024 and what we're expecting to spend for 2025, just visually in a percentage for you. Next topic will be the sanitary sewers, the budget 305. The year in review, we had the operational technologist coordinator that had started the development of our SOPs. Our Mesh business analyst has developed work management modules in this area. Couple of them that he's created are hotspots where we have known issues that our crew has a map and then month by month takes them through how to get to clear the lines. And then there's a flushing program module that breaks the city into all different catchment zones so that we can work through the cleaning of the sanitary mains. This year, we happened to exceed the county's KPIs, and that was through working with Mesh and these modules, and also our CCTV contractor, when they would flush the mains for video surveillance. The proposed initiatives for 2025 are to continue to build out our standard operating procedures and the implementation of Cartograph work management system to support the wastewater functions. I'll explain Cartograph a little further later on, but that is a county-driven management system. In sanitary sewers here, this is the table of what was asked for in 2024 and again in 2025. The key one that stands out to me was the decrease of the 9%, 9.4%. That was a decrease in the sanitary sewer camera inspections. That budget dropped because we were efficient enough with what we had done with our contractor and our own internal flushing that we didn't need the full budget. This visual here gives you the idea of where we spent the money in 2024 and where we're going to plan on spending the money for 2025. The last topic I will talk about today is our water department. Over the last year and for them, they've developed Mesh work order modules. Key ones that they use daily are their water disconnects and forms for the county. Mesh, they'll go into it and it's very visual, makes it easier for our guys to enter what they need, and it, on the back end, prints out a form for the county. And initiatives for the 2025, they will continue their high level of service. They continue to build out of mesh, work order systems, and the functions within Cartograph. Earlier I'd said I would distinguish the two. So Cartograph is a county-maintained work order management system that's heavily into the GIS, which is geographic information. It is integrated with Esri that both the county and the city use. Cartograph is used to log completed work on assets such as hydrants and valves, where mesh is fully customizable cloud solution, and it's everyday paperwork, vehicle checks, requests for time off, stuff like that. Makes it easy for staff. We've digitalized 95% of our paper forms into the mesh platform, so we save on trees. And here's the water's overall budget here from 2024 compared to 2025. And you'll note the repairs, there's a 19% increase there, and that is for water locates. This here's a visual breakdown for you of the expenditures from 2024 and the ask for 2025. Not very much difference. And to sum it up in all for the Public Works Department here, year in review for 2024 is a lot of implementation with the work management system mesh that we use. Established a lot of standard operating procedures which were never there for the public works functions. The waste program changes were investigated and recommendations brought forth to both council, city, and county. The further program development through 2025. Our proposed initiatives as a whole for 2025 will be to continue the implementation and expand the mesh work order system, implementation of the work management system Cartograph for the water and wastewater areas, continue to build out all standard operating procedures for public works functions. The public works renovation project is expected to be completed mid-2025 at the 944 James Street Yard. Planning for new organics program, because as we know, that starts January 1st, 2026, and our waste contract agreement with the county to be negotiated. And I will open the floor to any questions that you have.
I was just gonna say, it was ironic that you had a sidewalk clearing machine.
Yeah, I
No
was
clearing machine there in the
I
picture.
figured that was kind of fitting for the timing right now.
Any questions for our Public Works Supervisor? I know we've all been in touch with him a lot recently, and I thank him for his patience and all of staff, of course, with the amount of snow we received in such a short period of time. Any questions on the presentation in general before I open it up to the pages? Maybe I'll just touch on real quick with the exciting changes to organics coming to the city. There was a lot of talk, those watching at home, of course, with bag tags, what's happening. That didn't go anywhere today for council, in case they're tuning in tonight thinking that's what's being talked about today versus at county council earlier today. So far, it was defeated. The bag tags are at $2. I'm not kidding when I say I probably got 5 questions already, 5 different messages this evening. Right now it is $2 per bag, which of course is directed by the county. It's not done here at the city. But Councillor Tate, Councillor Martin and I, of course, were in the long debate today. So we'll see where that goes. It's certainly not done and over with yet. So with that, any questions for the presentation? Seeing none, we'll get into pages 16 and 17 to start with for Public Works. Seeing none, I'll open it up to pages 18 and 19 as well. Counselor Shanberg.
Yeah, question through to Mr. Leros. The pavement markings, is that simply crosswalks or is there more involved with that, like even bike lanes and whatnot? That's line 0101, pavement markings full-time.
Through your worship to the councilor's question, that is all pavement marking. So that would include the crosswalks, the stop bars, any line painting that we do.
We talk about requests often and phone calls you might be receiving. Are there requests ever to add more additional crosswalks or the thicker lined crosswalks? Because some of the ones in Woodstock that seem to be somewhat enforced and used by all drivers or recognized by all drivers are those thicker barred ones, almost 3D painting. I see you only spent about half your money last year on pavement markings. Would there be an opportunity maybe to add more crosswalks to the city of Woodstock for pedestrian safety?
Through your worship to the councilor's question, unfortunately, last year there was significant breakdowns with our paint machines in the middle of summer when we can do the painting. And both of our units had to go away. We have one for yellow, one for white. And both units had to go away for an extended time to be repaired. Both are fixed, both are working and in operation. And as your question about the lines there and the stop bars and stuff like that, the biggest request would be the ladder style crosswalks that are asked to be put in. That's the most that we get asked for them.
Thank you. I do have a question on page 18 under sidewalk snow controls. I do see there's what, $6,500 increase under 74040-0101. Is that just more staff? Is that just more snow clearing going to be done?
Through your worship to your question, that increase is to do a better service for the sidewalks for snow clearing. You can notice last year we didn't spend very much in that budget due to the lack of snow. This year, I know we will spend a lot more on that.
Mhm.
So that'll be not for additional staff, but just to have the
Extra capacity.
equipment out more often.
No, there's no question. For those watching at home, of course, we're talking about $7,600 spent all of last year. And now we're talking about increasing that after this last year to 40,550. So thank you for recognizing that. Moving along. I'll open it up to pages 20 and 21. Any questions on pages 20 and 21? And we'll finish up that section with 22, 23, and there's a little bit on page 24. So I'll open it up for all public works sections, pages 16 to 24. Any questions on any of those items? On any of those pages? Counselor Shanberg.
Maybe not a question, just a recognition to your staff, because I see the special events comes up here, just as it does for Kristen Broadhagen's budget. But in case for Works Department, it's to help close streets for parades and et cetera, et cetera. So just a nice recognition for your staff, especially since, for example, the Victoria Day Monday Parade is obviously a holiday and your crew's out working.
Anyone else before we move along to waste? All right, moving along. Pages 27, we'll do the whole section. Page 27, 28, 29, and there's just a line on page 30. Any questions for waste? Going once. Twice. All right, we'll move along. We'll go to sewer, which is page 36 to 38. Same idea a little bit on page 38. So any questions under the sewer section for sanitary sewer? Page 36, 37, and 38. We're going far too easy on you. Counselor Shanberg, there you go.
As soon as I heard that, your worship, I decided I better ask a question to Mr. Laros, and it's under sanitary camera inspections. 1930 was what was spent in 2024 and projecting 3,900 for 2025. Reasoning as to why that's sort of doubled.
Through your worship to the counselor, can you repeat the account number again?
Yeah, what page in the count?
Yeah, sorry, page 37 at the bottom, sanitary camera inspection, so it's 0101 again, but it's under full-time wages for that department.
Through your worship to the counselor's question. Over the last little while, we've noticed a significant increase in calls for routes in laterals. And this here gives us the ability to have our staff go out and investigate what the issue is before we can hire a contractor in order to make a liner repair so that the routes don't cause issues further.
Okay. Last chance for sewer. Again, pages 36, 37, and 38. Okay, we'll move along to water, which is a bigger section, I believe. So we'll go 39 and 40. Any questions on pages 39 and 40 for water? Open it up to page 41. Seeing no questions so far, we'll open it up to pages, the entire section. So any questions, page 39 to 43 under water? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I'll welcome Ms. Humphreys, our deputy CAO, and the clerk. We'll talk about the clerk office. I've got pages 108, I think 111, if I'm not mistaken. Then a little bit, yes. So follow along at home. Yeah, again, pages 108 to 111. Ms. Humphreys, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. It's my pleasure to present you with the 2025 revenue budget on behalf of the Clerk's Department. So as you recall, I like to start my presentation with some stats from the previous year. These are stats that we monitor over time, looking for trends, understanding what's keeping our staff busy, where workloads are increasing or decreasing, and how we can make sure we're balancing capacity. But also I think it's fun to present it to council just to remind you of some of the things that we're working on in the department outside of the things where we interact with you on a regular basis. So outside of council meetings, planning meetings, committee meetings, budget agendas, regular agendas, minutes, bylaws, those really clerky things that we talk about. There's much more to the roles that we do. So I like to share this information with council. You'll notice that we have reduced the, so to speak, pandemic years. because especially in the work that we do, it created significant anomalies in our data. It was really interesting to watch what was happening during the pandemic and where we saw spikes and valleys in the work that we were doing. But really, as we track those trends over time, those anomalies skew the data slightly. So I have removed them just for the purposes of the presentation. So we continue to be a popular wedding destination here in the city of Woodstock. We performed 141 wedding ceremonies right here in this room last year. And that is I think it's 114% increase since the first number on the slide here. So we are continuing to be very popular amongst folks looking to get married here in the city. Marriage licenses and death certificates both have increased as well. Those are things we expect to see increase over time as our population increases. Lottery licenses are down. They have not rebounded after the pandemic. We saw a significant drop here during that time, understandably, but a lot of those smaller lotteries haven't returned. We're also seeing a trend towards online lotteries, and those lotteries are actually licensed by the province, not by the municipality. So some of the bigger lotteries in the city, like the hospital or Southgate Center, have moved to online. So we actually expect to see this number continue to decrease over time. We issued 191 business licenses last year, down a little bit from the previous year, but still on the upward trend. Again, as the city grows, we expect to see this number increase. 22 liquor licenses last year. This number fluctuates quite a bit depending on the businesses that are opening and whether or not they need a liquor license. But that is a service that we provide to the community. Zone change notices. This has leveled off since the pandemic. There was a significant spike in this area during that time. Our friends in the planning department were very busy, but we have seen this level back off. And when we talk about zone change notices, we're talking more about that administrative function that we support the county with, the planning department there, not necessarily the number of planning applications that you saw. You see that on your agendas, but this is when council has approved that a property have the zoning changed, and there's a number of things that we do following that. So we issued 23 notices. So we had 23 properties in the city last year have a zone change on them. 24 minor variances, so that's leveled back off as well. Now, FOI requests, we had 122 FOI requests last year. So that's a 1,425% increase since 2017. It's a 663% increase in the last 5 years, and even a 30% increase over last year alone. So we're working through the implementation of the new FOI software that was approved last year by council, so thank you for that. But there has been a delay in the implementation due to the turnover in the manager of legislative services position, but that is anticipated to be operating in 2025, and it will help create some efficiency in this area. We're also going to be working with the building department. That's where most of our FOIs come from, and we want to identify ways that these requests can be streamlined, if that's possible. So for example, can we charge a regular service fee through our fee bylaw for that person to go directly to the building department and receive the information if they are the property owner? So if they provide photo ID, identifying themselves as that owner, and we've satisfied ourselves to that, is there a different way to provide them with that information? Because pushing it through the FOI process is significantly more burden, or has more burden than the actual just administration process of handing somebody a piece of paper. There's a lot of legislative requirements that come along with an FOI request. So if we can find different ways to handle that, I think we can help alleviate some of the pinch points that we're feeling in this area. So we're going to investigate that in 2025, because at this rate, we are trending towards a staff position just to manage these requests. It's very, very onerous. So we want to make sure that we are exploring all avenues for efficiency before we find ourselves in that situation. Commissioner of Oaths continues to trend down, 287 last year. We expect to see this continue because we did see a number of years ago a very significant spike because Service Ontario stopped performing this service. They have gone back to providing that service to their clients, so we're seeing less of that here at City Hall. And one that I love to track is the number of pieces of mail that we send. So the clerk's department processes the mail for the entire corporation, and we had 43,782 pieces processed last year. So you can see even from 2017 in that first slide, that's an 11,000 item difference. Now, of course, that makes sense. Over time, we should be sending things electronically, but we also had a Canada Post strike last year, as you'll recall. So we expect to see that number down. But further to what the Deputy Treasurer said in his presentation last night, it also um, caused a lot of people to sign up for electronic tax bills with us, which was a change that was made to the legislation a few years ago that we can send those electronically. So I'll be really curious to see what happens to this trend next year and what kind of impact that has. Okay, so just some notes on the increase you see in this budget for 2025. Here to talk about insurance again. So as discussed in previous years, the commercial insurance market is cyclical, and we entered what was called a hard market in 2020, following nearly a decade of a soft market where we saw only small inflationary increases. So many of the events that drove that hard market are outside of the municipality's control, but they affect our premiums nonetheless. So Woodstock's increases during that time were low in comparison to other municipalities across the province because we do have a strong loss ratio. However, it was still a very painful time for this budget line. So I'm happy to be able to advise that we seem to have come out of this time and we've re-entered a soft market. So the overall increase for the entire program for 2025 is 4%. Now, with that said, this particular budget line does require some further explanation as it in fact shows a 7.4% increase in the booklet, not a 4% increase. So this general insurance line covers only the corporate pieces of the portfolio. So that includes general liability, errors and omissions, coverage for our volunteers, for example, the coverage for the buildings that we own. But other areas such as auto, transit, and specific equipment are assigned directly to the piece of equipment in the budget, and they're not accounted for in this general budget line. So renewal items such as auto and transit were actually a 0% increase this year, which is really great news. So you won't see those increases in those other areas of the budget. So the entirety of the increase for 2025 happens in this general insurance line. And it includes increases in our general liability, which has gone up 2.9%, pretty good, and property coverage, which has gone up 30%. Now, with our property coverage, our insurer undertook inspections of various properties in 2024, and they not only did risk assessments, um, but they calculated and updated the replacement costs that they have on file for these buildings. So some of the buildings were assessed just to get that update of the replacement costs as it hadn't been done in well over a decade. So that included the art gallery, Reeves Community Complex, and the library. Some of the assessments were done because we've made changes to the buildings and they haven't inspected them yet. So that included the Parkinson Road Fire Hall. So we've done an expansion there. We've also added a live training center there. The police station was inspected and we've done an expansion there as well. And of course, the west end of the market center was renovated. So they took a look at that one. So as you can imagine, the replacement costs of these properties increased significantly. And the premiums for these locations, in fairness, should increase accordingly. If it's going to cost them more to replace it, if we lose it, then we need to pay more for the premium for that building. So if you take that property portion out of the increase of the whole portfolio, so if we happen to not have had those inspections last year, we actually would have had a 1.6% increase. So that definitely indicates that we have gone back to a soft market, which is lovely. So 1.6% without the property. If you put the property back in, it is 4% across the board, although in the booklet on this budget line, you see closer to 7.4%. Now, a quick note on postage. So last year we budgeted 60,000. We only spent 54,000. So you might wonder why we're asking for 70,000 next year when we didn't spend our entire budget. But Canada Post has announced a 25% rate increase effective January of this year. So they're going from 99 cents per letter to $1.23 per letter. So even though we see in those stats the amount of mail we're sending is decreasing, we still need to have more budget in this particular area. Okay, and a note on the wages for 2025. So within the clerk's department, full-time wages, as well as city hall wages, which is our maintenance and custodial folks, and in the crossing guards, you'll see that we do have that negotiated annual increase for 2024 and 2025 in those budget lines. But also in the clerk's department specifically, We do have the annualization of the new position that council graciously approved to us in 2024, and thank you, that's been very helpful for us. So that was our manager of legislative services. So we're actually seeing the annualization of that particular position in that budget line as well. But as Mr. Creary mentioned last night, my wages have been reallocated to the CIO's office. So the lion's share of my wages have been removed. So in theory, that makes the clerk's department budget look really great. We see actually a decrease of 2% here. But if we had standard budgeting, we actually would have seen an increase of 17.92% in this budget line. So again, makes this part look really good, but those increases for the negotiated wages and the annualization is in the budget. It's just moved to a different area. And then finally, for 2025, we do have the election reserve as well. So traditionally, the $40,000 allocation to the reserve is based on the anticipated costs of a traditional paper ballot election. So as you recall, council decided back in January to move to a hybrid election in 2026, and that has an anticipated cost increase of $135,000. So we've increased the contribution to the reserve by $70,000 to limit that budgetary impact next year during the election year. And then following the 2026 budget, we'll allocate the reserve accordingly to make sure that we are smoothing out that cost of the election over the full 4 years. So in total for 2025, we have an increased expenditure of about $250,000, again, not including those wages because that's been moved into a different budget. But the insurance increase in totality is $110,000. Postage is $10,000 and the election reserve is $70,000. So that really covers the majority of the increase we're looking at here. The rest is kind of sprinkled throughout different areas, wages, health benefits, et cetera. But those are really the three heavy hitters, so to speak. And now, Your Worship, if I could, just before we move on to questions, I do have a bit of an unusual note for council, similar to what we heard from our manager of culture. But there are no additions to the base budget request this year from the clerk's department. However, we would like to lend our support in conjunction with the Market Center and Museum and the Art Gallery to the request you received from the engineering department for a facility manager. We feel that centralizing this responsibility and creating this corporate resource has several benefits for the facilities and also for the corporation in its entirety. So it allows the buildings to be managed and maintained by a subject matter expert with the required knowledge and skills that someone who just happens to work in a facility and is responsible for maintaining it does off the side of their desk. We just don't have that same expertise. As Councillor Martin mentioned last night, it allows us to be proactive rather than reactive in the care and maintenance of our facilities. And it allows us to rely less heavily on our contractors and have our own subject matter expert to talk to about these types of things. And we feel there are other strategic advantages and efficiencies for the organization to be realized, as this position will create capacity in multiple departments, allowing time for other positions to focus on their areas of expertise and work on things like program development and policy updates, rather than things like generators and HVAC units and cleaning supplies. Things that I never imagined I would know as much as I do about in my career, that's for sure. So we do respectfully lend our support to that request from the engineering department for council's consideration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions for the clerk's department? Ms. Humphries in particular on the presentation before we get into the pages. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. The city pays the metered rate on postage, correct? The $1.23 as opposed to if we were licking stamps, that would be $1.44 and 5 more people.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Martin, yes, that is correct. We have the metered and a very, very sophisticated and helpful postage machine in the back to process.
So there is no cheaper rate yet for large volume users like the city. The metered rate is the best possible rate.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Martin, yes, at this time, that's correct.
Thank you. Anything else before we get into the details of the pages? Okay, let's get into it. Under clerks, we have, again, pages 108 to 111. We're gonna start with 108 and 109. Any questions on either one of those pages? Again, pages 108 and 109. So clerk's department or city hall at this point. Seeing none, then I'll flip the page. I'll include the rest of the section. So any questions at all on pages 108, 109, 110, or 111? All right, seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
That, of course, brings us to, I'll say, our section, mayor and council. There's no presentation that I have myself, so I'll open it up to the floor for all of council. Any questions, discussion on pages, and I have 103 in my book. No, on the agenda it says 105. Yeah, I have pages 103 to 105 is what we're talking about right now. Are there any questions on either my budget or your budget? Again, we're discussing pages 103, 104, and 105 in particular. No questions on our budgets? There's nothing of note there, I'll agree, for those watching at home, but then we'll move along to committees of council, which is, again, I have here in my book 106 and 107. Any questions on those? Okay, seeing none. I think that covers everything we planned on in the last 2 nights. If we're comfortable to move along, I think that'll be it. So the Police Services Board, Public Library Board, and Art Gallery Advisory Board will be presenting their budgets at the regular meeting of council being held next week on March 6th, which is a 1:30 meeting for anybody watching at home. Final approval of the revenue budget is scheduled for the regular meeting of council on March 20th, which will be a 7 p.m. meeting. Councilors are requested to forward their suggested amendments to council, the CAO, the city clerk, and the Director of Administrative Services by March 13th, 2025. Amendments can, of course, be brought forward on council floor on March 20th as well. Any other questions from council before we adjourn? In that case, looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Leatherborough, seconded by Councillor Martin. Are all those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, and thank you all to staff for staying and watching everybody's presentations in the last couple of nights. So thank you. Have a good night, everyone.